Every night, I climbed into bed next to a man who hadn't kissed me in months. I stopped trying, stopped hoping. Then someone else noticed my sad eyes, my forced smiles. His words were like oxygen, "You deserve more." One night, I got a text, "I'm outside." My heart raced as I slipped out the door. The next morning, my husband looked up from his phone and said, "You're glowing. What's different?" I met his eyes for the first time in years and said, "I found someone who sees me." He blinked, then his phone slipped from his hand. Every night, I climbed into bed next to a man who hadn't kissed me in months. I stopped trying, stopped hoping. And then someone else noticed my sad eyes, my forced smiles. His words were like oxygen, "You deserve more." And for the first time in years, I believed it. I didn't wake up one day and decide to cheat. That's not how it happens. It's slow, subtle, like a leak in the ceiling that starts as a water stain, small, harmless. Until one day, the ceiling caves in. I used to love Mark. And I think, at some point, he loved me, too. But years of routine, stress, and indifference had turned us into something worse than strangers. We were roommates who barely spoke, barely touched. Our marriage wasn't bad in the dramatic way people expect. No screaming, no cheating, at least, not on his end, no scandals. It was just lifeless. A quiet kind of neglect. He would come home, sigh like the weight of the world was on his shoulders, and disappear into his phone. Dinner was mostly silence, broken only by the kids talking. He was a good father. He showed up for them. But for me? I could have been a houseplant for all he noticed. It wasn't always like this. I remember when he used to kiss my forehead before work. When he'd reach for my hand in the car, absent-mindedly rubbing my knuckles. When he'd pull me against him in bed, even half asleep, because even in dreams, he wanted me close. Then one day, he stopped. I don't even know when, exactly. I just know I stopped feeling wanted. I tried. God, I tried. I planned date nights. He'd cancel. I dressed up for him. He barely looked up. I climbed into bed at night, waiting, hoping he'd reach for me. He never did. Eventually, I stopped trying. And that was the beginning of the end. Then I met Daniel. He worked in the same building as me, just a few floors up. I'd seen him in passing for years, tall, confident, the kind of guy who made people laugh effortlessly. But we'd never really talked. Until one morning, when I was standing in the break room, staring into my coffee like it might tell me where my life went wrong. "Long morning?" he asked, leaning against the counter. I forced a smile. Something like that. Most people would have left it there. But not Daniel. "You okay?" That's all he said. 2 words. Simple. And suddenly, I had to fight the urge to cry. When was the last time someone asked me that? When was the last time I didn't have to pretend I was fine? I nodded. Lied. Yeah. Just tired. He didn't look convinced, but he let it go. He started talking about something else, something easy, something funny. And for the first time in months, I laughed. And just like that, something shifted. We started talking more. At first, it was innocent. Work stuff. Books. Random jokes in the break room. Then, it got deeper. One day, I admitted, without even thinking, that I wasn't happy. It just slipped out. Daniel was quiet for a second. Then he said it. "You deserve more." And the worst part? I knew he was right. It took weeks for me to admit that I was in dangerous territory. That looking forward to seeing Daniel at work, lingering just a little too long in conversation, laughing a little too hard at his jokes, it wasn't nothing. It was the start of something. I told myself I wasn't doing anything wrong. That it wasn't like that. That we were just friends. Then one evening, I was sitting in my car after work, dreading going home, and I got a text. "Daniel. Wanna grab a drink?" I hesitated. Stared at my phone. Then, before I could overthink it, I typed, "Sure." We met at a bar a few blocks from the office. I told myself it was just a drink. Just talking. But the way he looked at me across the table? No one had looked at me like that in years. And when he reached across and brushed a strand of hair behind my ear, my entire body went still. "I see you, he said. I don't think he does." I should have left. Should have shut it down. Instead, I let him tuck my hair behind my ear. I let him look at me like I was the most important thing in the room. And that night, when I climbed into bed next to my husband, I realized I wasn't just thinking about Daniel. I was waiting for the next time I'd see him. Things escalated fast after that. Texts. Late-night conversations. Stolen glances. The way his hand would linger a second too long when he passed me something. The way I'd catch myself thinking about him when I should have been working, or worse, when I was with Mark. I felt alive again. Then, one night I was lying in bed, scrolling through old texts from Daniel, when my phone vibrated. "I'm outside." I sat up, heart pounding. Mark was snoring beside me. The house was dark. I should have ignored it. Instead, I slipped out of bed, crept down the stairs, and opened the front door. Daniel was leaning against his car, hands in his pockets, watching me like he already knew I wasn't going to send him away. "I just wanted to see you," he said. And when he stepped forward, cupped my face, and kissed me, I let him. The next morning, Mark was sitting at the kitchen table, scrolling through his phone like always. I walked in, still feeling the ghost of Daniel's hands on me, the heat of his lips. Mark looked up. And for the first time in years, he really looked at me. His brows furrowed. "You're glowing." I froze. "What's different?" he asked. A million lies ran through my head. But instead, I met his eyes, held them, and said, "I found someone who sees me." Mark blinked. Then his phone slipped from his hands. And that's when everything cracked wide open. Mark didn't move at first. He just stared at me, his phone forgotten on the table. His mouth opened slightly, like he was about to say something, but then he shut it again. The silence stretched. Thick. Heavy. Then, finally, he exhaled. "What does that mean?" His voice was quiet, too calm. I felt a tremor in my hands. I clenched them into fists. "Don't back down. Don't lie." "It means exactly what it sounds like," I said. Mark sat back, rubbing a hand over his face. He still hadn't touched his phone, which told me how serious this was. Normally, his phone was glued to his hand like an extra limb. "Are you saying," he swallowed, "are you having an affair?" I didn't answer. Because what was I supposed to say? That I hadn't technically slept with Daniel yet? That this wasn't just about the physical part? That it wasn't about sex, it was about feeling wanted, feeling alive again? Instead, I asked, "Do you even care?" His head snapped up. "What kind of question is that?" I let out a sharp breath. A real one. Mark looked at me like he didn't recognize me. Maybe he didn't. Maybe I didn't recognize myself either. "What do you expect me to say?" he asked. I wanted to scream. Cry. Shake him. Do something, damn it. But instead, I just said, "Nothing. I don't expect anything from you anymore." That landed. I saw it in his face. And then, just as quickly, he shut down. The way he always did. He stood up, grabbed his phone, and walked out of the kitchen. I stood there, shaking, waiting for him to come back. He didn't. That night, he didn't come to bed. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sound of him pacing downstairs. I could picture it, his hand in his hair, his jaw clenched, his mind racing. Maybe this was the reaction I had been waiting for. The proof that he still felt something. Or maybe this was just another kind of silence. The next morning, he was gone. No note. No text. Just gone. I stared at the empty space in the closet where his work bag usually sat. I checked my phone. Nothing. I should have felt guilty. Maybe a part of me did. But mostly, I felt relief. Then, at 10 a.m., my phone buzzed. "Unknown number, we need to talk." I frowned. Then, another message. "Unknown number, I know about Daniel." My breath caught. I stared at the screen, heart hammering. Mark wouldn't text me like this. If he had something to say, he'd say it to my face, or not at all. Which meant, this was someone else. And they knew. I left my desk and rushed to the bathroom, locking myself in a stall. My hands were shaking as I typed back. "Me, who is this?" A few seconds passed. Then, "Unknown number, check your email." A chill ran down my spine. I opened my work email with sweaty fingers. There was a new message. No subject. No name. Just one attachment. A photo. And when I opened it, my stomach dropped. It was me and Daniel. In his car. Our faces close. His hand on my cheek. And it wasn't just any photo. It was from last night. My heart was racing. I looked around the bathroom stall like someone might be watching me right now. Who took this? How? Why? 1,000 thoughts collided at once. Was it Mark? No, if he knew, he would have confronted me himself. Daniel? No, why would he? I felt sick. Whoever this was, they were watching me. And now, they wanted me to know. Another message. "Unknown number, you have 24 hours to tell him. Or I will." My pulse pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. I read the message again. 24 hours. Who the hell was this? My first instinct was to call Daniel. He was the only one who knew. The only one I had told. My fingers hovered over his name in my phone. Then, another thought struck me like a slap. What if he had told someone? My stomach twisted. No, that didn't make sense. Why would he? But someone had seen us. Someone had taken that photo. And now, someone was threatening me. My hands were still shaking as I typed back. "Me, who are you?" No response. I waited, staring at my phone, willing it to vibrate. Nothing. I was trapped in a tiny, cold bathroom stall, the smell of cheap hand soap thick in the air, and for the first time since this whole thing started, I felt genuine fear. This wasn't just some moral crisis anymore. This was something else. I forced myself to walk back to my desk, even though my legs felt like jelly. Daniel. I needed to see Daniel. I sent him a quick text. We need to talk. Now. His reply came almost instantly. Daniel, meet me in the stairwell. I found him pacing between floors, running a hand through his hair. The second he saw me, his brows furrowed. What's wrong? I didn't say anything, I just shoved my phone at him. Let him see it for himself. He took the phone, read the messages, then slowly looked up at me. His face went pale. I waited for him to say something, anything. Instead, he turned around and slammed his fist into the stairwell wall. I jumped. What the hell, Daniel? I hissed, looking around. We were alone, but still, I wasn't exactly trying to get fired on top of everything else. He was breathing hard, his jaw clenched. His hand was red where he had hit the wall, but he didn't seem to notice. Did you tell anyone? I demanded. He turned back to me, eyes flashing. Are you serious? I just stared at him. Then, finally, he sighed and dragged a hand down his face. No, I didn't tell anyone. But I might know who did. I froze. What? He hesitated. Then, my ex. My stomach dropped. His ex. I had forgotten about her. Which was stupid, because she was part of the reason Daniel and I had connected in the first place. She had cheated on him. Publicly. Messily. He had found out through a mutual friend, and when he confronted her, she hadn't even denied it. Just told him he was boring. I remember the night he told me. How angry he was. How much he hated her. And now she knew about me. She's been following me, he muttered, rubbing his temples. She still texts me sometimes. Calls me drunk. I didn't think she'd actually. He cut himself off. I felt sick. You think she took the photo? I whispered. I know she did, Daniel said grimly. She sent me the same message last night. I inhaled sharply. That meant. She knows about Mark, I whispered. She knows I'm married. Daniel gave me a look. You think? I pressed my fingers to my forehead, trying to steady my breathing. My affair wasn't just a secret anymore. It was leverage. For the rest of the day, I jumped at every noise. Every notification. Every passing glance from a coworker. I felt exposed. Like someone was watching me. Then, at exactly 6 p.m., my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Time's almost up. I clenched my jaw. I had two choices. Tell Mark before she did. Or wait for the explosion. Neither option was good. But one of them meant keeping some control. So I made my decision. I was going to tell him. I got home and found Mark sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone. Just like always. I took a deep breath. Walked in. He glanced up. Hey. I sat down across from him. My hands were ice cold. We need to talk. His face didn't change, but I saw it, the flicker of something in his eyes. Okay, he said slowly. He put his phone down. What's up? I opened my mouth and then, before I could say a word, his phone buzzed. I watched the screen light up. And my heart stopped, because I saw the name. Unknown number. Mark picked up his phone, frowned, and answered. Hello? I sat there, frozen, as I watched the color drain from his face. He didn't say anything. Just listened. Then, after a long, horrible pause, he slowly turned to look at me. And I knew. I was too late. Mark's face went blank. Not angry. Not sad. Just empty. He didn't even look at me as he pulled the phone away from his ear and ended the call. The silence that followed was thick, suffocating. Then, finally, he turned his head. Met my eyes. Who was that? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Mark held up the phone and flipped the screen toward me. One unread message. I swallowed hard and read it. Unknown number. She's been lying to you. I have proof. Below the text, another photo. This time, it was worse. Daniel and I, in his apartment. My hands in his hair, his lips on mine. Undeniable. Inescapable. My mouth went dry. Mark exhaled through his nose, tossed his phone onto the coffee table, and leaned forward, pressing his hands together like he was holding something back. His knee bounced. His knuckles were white. I need you to say it, he said finally, voice too calm. I blinked, my breath coming shallow. Mark. Say it, he snapped, his voice cutting through the air like a knife. I flinched. And then, because I had no choice anymore, I told him the truth. It all came out. How it started. How long it had been going on. I left nothing out. And Mark just sat there, staring at the wall, his expression unreadable. Then he let out a low, bitter laugh. Jesus Christ. He rubbed a hand over his mouth. I knew something was wrong, but I thought maybe you were just unhappy. I didn't think. He trailed off. I clenched my fists, feeling tears burn at the edges of my eyes. Mark, I don't, he snapped, his voice suddenly sharp. Don't say you're sorry. Not yet. I shut my mouth. He stood up abruptly, pacing, running a hand through his hair. Then, suddenly, he stopped and looked at me. Who took these photos? I hesitated. His eyes narrowed. Who the fuck took these photos, my name? I let out a shaky breath. Daniel's ex. His face twisted. What? She found out. She must have been following us, taking pictures. She sent them to me first. Told me I had 24 hours to tell you or she would. Mark let out a low, humorless laugh and shook his head. So if she hadn't forced you, you wouldn't have told me at all? I swallowed. And that was his answer. Then, something changed in his expression. Something dark. Give me your phone. I hesitated. Give me your fucking phone, my name. I handed it over with trembling fingers. He scrolled through it fast, looking for something proof, answers I didn't know. Then he paused. His entire body went still. I knew before he even turned the screen toward me what he had found. Daniel's messages. Mark read them aloud, his voice hollow. Daniel, I need you. I miss you. Daniel, you looked so beautiful tonight. I couldn't stop staring. Daniel, I wish we didn't have to hide. Mark let out a short, sharp breath. His hands clenched around my phone so hard I thought he might throw it. But he didn't. Instead, he turned back to me, and when he spoke, his voice was eerily calm. Are you in love with him? I couldn't answer right away. Because I didn't know. And that hesitation? That silence? It was worse than any confession. Mark nodded once, like he had his answer. Then, slowly, he set my phone down and walked toward the front door. Where are you going? I asked, panic rising. He didn't look back. Out! Then the door slammed behind him. The aftermath was worse than the confession. Mark was gone for hours. I called. He didn't answer. I texted. Nothing. I sat in the kitchen, staring at my phone, waiting for something, anything. Then, finally, past midnight, the front door creaked open. I turned, breath catching. Mark walked in. His face was unreadable. His clothes smelled like cigarettes, even though he didn't smoke. His eyes were bloodshot. He sat down across from me at the table. And for a long time, we just stared at each other. Then, in a voice so quiet I almost didn't hear it, he said, Was there ever a point where you wanted us to work? Tears filled my eyes. Yes. His expression didn't change. Then why didn't you try? His voice cracked. Why didn't you tell me you felt like this before it got this bad? I wiped my face. I did, Mark. I tried for years. You weren't there. Something shattered behind his eyes. And then he whispered, I thought we were just comfortable. I didn't know you were miserable. The weight of it all was crushing. The next few weeks were a slow-motion car crash. Mark moved into the guest room. We barely spoke. The house felt cold, empty. Then, one evening, he sat me down. I want a divorce, he said. I already knew it was coming, but hearing it still made my chest cave in. I nodded. Neither of us cried. Maybe we were both just too exhausted. But then, as Mark stood up, he looked at me one last time and said, I don't hate you. But I don't know if I can ever forgive you. And somehow, that hurt more than anything else. Daniel wanted us to be together. He thought that, now that Mark and I were done, we could finally have something real. But when I looked at him, I realized something. He wasn't what I wanted. He had been a way out. A distraction. A reminder that I was still someone. But I didn't love him. So I ended it. And for the first time in a long time, I was completely alone. I moved into a small apartment. My kids went back and forth between me and Mark. Some days, it felt unbearable. The silence. The regret. Other days, it felt like freedom. I learned to live with both. One evening, months later, Mark and I met up at a coffee shop to discuss the kids. The divorce was final. He looked better. Stronger. So did I. As we finished talking, he hesitated. Then, almost too quietly, he asked, Would you have told me if you hadn't been caught? I met his eyes. And for the first time, I answered honestly. I don't know. He nodded, exhaled, and stood up. Take care, my name. And just like that, he was gone. I don't know if I'll ever forgive myself. I don't know if he'll ever forgive me. But I do know this. If you're in a marriage that feels dead, say something. Do something. Fix it before it's too late. Because if you don't, one day, you might wake up next to someone who hasn't kissed you in months. And by the time you realize you miss it, it might already be over.